What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Dreams to Reality podcast, and today we are still here in the center of Bristol. If you can hear the traffic noises and the crane noises outside, do not blame me, blame my special guest today, Bianca, for no complete reason. What's going on, Bianca? How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So just to give a bit of kind of clarity for people at home, what I know about you and how I first met you is through a mental health course, right? What are they actually technically called?
Mental Health First Aid England.
So I was on that course, 2-day course. I paid the money. I thought it was really important for the work I'm doing within schools and the work I'm doing with people. So I thought it was very important for me to learn a lot more about mental health, because one thing a lot of people have is their own experiences, which sometimes is good, but then it's also good to get some reassurance of what we actually know. So how long have you been teaching that course for?
So I've been doing the mental health first aid for just over a year and a half now. And there's a 2-day, which is the first aid, which you had the privilege of doing with myself.
Yeah.
And then there's a 1-day course, which is aimed at businesses. And then there's a half-day course, which is for awareness, to raise awareness and reduce the stigma. So there's a suite of courses.
That's quite hard to do in a half a day though, because even in 2-day course it was intense, and I came away with just thinking about everything. I had more questions, especially the course we was on. There was a diverse crowd. I kind of felt sorry for you at times because we were just all firing questions, and it was still quite a good room, I guess.
I think that I learn a lot from the group. Even now, the groups that I have are what helps me still learn as well. So I like it when people are asking me questions and when people are talking in the groups. I think that's where most of the learning comes from.
Okay, let's take it back a little bit. How old are you?
33.
33. What was you doing? You born in Bristol?
Bristol, born and bred, yes.
Born and bred in Bristol. Lucky for you, or unlucky, I'm not sure. Born and bred in Bristol. What did you do when you came out of school?
So
was you good in school? Be
no.
honest. What school did you go to?
I went to a good school in Keynsham.
Okay. Broadland Academy.
But,
oh, okay.
Yes, but I wasn't really into school. I think I had a problem with authority and always wanted to kind of lead. And when I left school, I went to Filton College and I'd done drama because I enjoyed performing. So kind of acting, singing, dancing. And then I went into retail, in kind of subprime retail, which is things like Bright House, the Money Shop, stuff like that. And I worked there for probably about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in those kind of that area. But what I did enjoy about all those kind of jobs was people and developing people and the training side. And I thought I wanted to develop that side a bit more. So I got made redundant from one of my jobs, and I was about to have a baby as well. And I was thinking
around the
about
same time?
Yeah.
So did you get maternity pay or no?
Yeah, so I had a small payout, which I then invested in some training courses, because although I had training spread around my CV, it wasn't evidenced.
Yeah.
So I took my redundancy and I paid to do a course, which is CIPD qualification, which is the Chartered Institute of Professional Development, and I do learning and development is the qualification that I've done to be able to evidence stuff, because sometimes on your CV you've got bits here, there and everywhere.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, actually, if I'm going to go into training, I need to evidence this. So I started doing the training qualification when I had my child. And then I thought, okay, what am I going to do now? I was on a low income, not much money coming in. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to pay for nursery for the child while I'm going to a job. It's not going to work out right for single mums who are going to work 9 to 5. It's expensive to pay for nursery. Okay. So I was like, right, I'm going to have to work for myself. So I started looking for courses that I could do and that I was interested in. And I think because I struggled with postnatal depression, with anxiety as well, that kind of led me to become passionate about mental health, not just for women, for everybody.
For everybody.
Yeah.
So did you know much about mental health before that? Was you quite a strong person before that? Have you ever experienced any difficulty with mental health? Because sometimes you could be the strongest person ever, and some women really suffer after having a baby.
Yes.
Was that kind of you?
Yeah,
And I
so
was a bit
it's
confused, like, what's going on? Why am I
it's
feeling
something,
like this?
you know, there's non-believers out there of mental health and they think that it's a weakness. And, you know, probably 10 years ago, that was definitely me, you know, what's wrong? Just, you know, stiff upper lip. But actually, after, you know, ignorance to a certain extent, but after learning and training, it opened my eyes. And actually, I've probably had things before in my teenage years, but just not gone to doctors and got diagnosed because there wasn't that awareness there. So yeah, I think everybody struggles. We know the numbers is 1 in 4. You know, mental health doesn't discriminate. And it's not just the person, it's the ripple effect.
It's interesting when you say about mental health doesn't discriminate, because obviously you get so many celebrities who would take their own lives and a wide mix of different people you hear about, and you just never ever expect it.
Money won't protect you from mental health.
Why though?
Because it's not just all about money. People think that it's money that makes us happy, but it's not. It's connections, it's relationships, it's love, it's friends, family, it's all that sort of stuff, rather than just money. What money does do is you can access the help quicker.
But then sometimes people's even got a family around them, they got love around them, they got everything you think, and there's still something missing. And it is real deep and it's real sad, and I just learnt that in your training. And like everybody handles things differently. Everybody has a different stress bucket, as we mentioned earlier.
Different size.
And it's just like, it's mad really. And the big one was, can you remember the Chester Bennington, the guy from Linkin Park?
Oh yeah.
So he was massive, obviously. When you actually listen to his music, he talked a lot about what he was struggling with, but then it's like when he took his life, everyone's like, oh my God, he's took his life. But then actually when you listen back to his music, all the signs were there. But he had he had like 6 kids, I think.
Wow.
So he had 6 kids, wife, supporting family, money, literally everything. And it still wasn't enough to protect him, essentially.
There was obviously other stuff there, deep-rooted, maybe when he was younger.
That's true.
Stuff going on. Because it's not a surprise, and once you're trained in kind of picking up signs and symptoms of somebody who might be having suicidal thoughts, you know, you can spot it. But you don't know what you don't know. It's training that you need, and there is a lot of training now for suicide prevention.
Yeah, there's actually different courses for that now as well.
Yeah, so there's a 1-day suicide kind of first aid course. There's an assist 2-day program which has been going on for a long time.
Are you looking to do something training that as well, or?
Possibly the first aid 1 day for suicide, because I think that fits in with everything else that I do. And I think that there's a lot that needs to be done, especially for men around suicide, as you know. And, you know, they estimate averagely about 15 per day.
That's crazy.
Exactly. And this is classed as a preventable death.
That's crazy.
A preventable death.
So then you have to ask yourself, right? You said to me earlier about Theo Campbell, the guy I had on last week. So he actually mentioned in the podcast, when it gets released, you'll see it, about the guy who was in Love Island, that Mike, who good-looking guy, famous, money, everything, and he recently took his life.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that using. What is the correct word? Is it taking your life? Because that was another debate, wasn't it?
Complete suicide.
Yeah,
because commit insinuates that it's a crime, and it's not a crime anymore. And now I think after you go through the education of the depression piece, you realise how distressed someone must be for that to be an option. And also a lot of people don't associate with not being here anymore. They just associate with that distress just ending.
Wow. That was one of the biggest takeaways I think I had from your course, was the power of language.
Yeah.
And then it made me question different things, how I use language at home with my kids, with my family, with my friends. And it chucks I think the language we use, it chucks a big spanner into the works. And actually, do you know what? Sometimes our language can be to uplift others, and other times it can do the complete opposite.
Yeah, how we use the words is very important, especially when we look at the kind of men's mental health and the stigma that goes along with that, and why men don't talk. When we say things like,
Man up.
yeah, men don't cry, stop being a big girl's blouse, all these things, why men will think that it's a weakness. So our language is a barrier, a massive barrier to people coming forward who are struggling with mental health.
So when you were suffering, you mentioned you're a single mum.
Yes, I am.
So how was it balancing suffering with your mental health, being a single mum, trying to be the best mum you can be, then having a fantastic idea of creating a business and growing a business and learning? So it might have felt like you were taking 1-2 steps back. You probably were at the time.
Yeah.
But then look where you are now. How was that whole balancing act?
It was very rocky. It was a juggling act, to say the least, because there's childcare, there's actually being at businesses, not letting them down, and that kind of professional front for what's going on as well. I couldn't have done it without a support network, basically, which is really important. So family, friends, backup for childcare, backup if nursery can't do it. There's a lot of juggling that I had to do and contend with. And for me, who's naturally an organised, very black and white person, that was really hard, and I've had to change my mindset and counteract a lot of things. So I've had to have a lot of backup plans to help my anxiety as well. To just kind of, okay, if that doesn't work, I've got this plan and I've got that plan. But it's a lot of thinking and it's a lot of energy. So I just think I wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for my parents and my family and my friends. But I'm very lucky to have that support network. A lot of people don't. And if it wasn't for them, I don't know what would have happened. I mean, the business I started last June, we've started trading in October, and you know, it's just growing.
Have you always been highly driven?
Intrinsic, definitely. Driven, motivated. If I've got something that I want to do, I go after it. But don't get me wrong, there was times where I felt like giving up, because it's hard to do everything with a child, and then you get mum guilt as well, because I'm like, okay, she's got 2 afternoons that I had to play with when she was going to nursery, and I was like, I can either be selfish and go do something I want to do, or I can sit here and I can cold call businesses. So you have to make a decision, and it's a sacrifice as well. It's a sacrifice of your, friends would be like, do you want to come out? I'm like, no, I've got to do this email, or I've got to do this. And the studying that I was doing, what I thought would be easy was a lot of essays, a lot of work, actually, more than I ever thought it would be. Yeah. So that was really hard. It was just hard.
Because when you're studying, you're not really getting paid, are you? So no. It's
It was a lot to balance and a lot to manage, and there was times where I felt so trapped. There was times where I just thought, when is the first kind of deal going to come? When is this going to pay off? And really lonely when you're by yourself. Because I'm passionate about it and I believe in it. And it's more than me, it's bigger than me. And I can see what I can do. And I think if it helps one person, I'll be happy. And I believe in this training. I think it's good training, and I think that people need more of it. And I don't just do the MHFA stuff now. I do well-being, I do resilience, I do a lot about prevention, a lot about sleep, nutrition, exercise, the basics that underpin our well-being. So, yeah, I'm passionate about it all, and holistic stuff as well.
So,
like mindfulness.
Let me take it. We'll come back onto all of that stuff, but let me take it back to a little bit to your personal life and your daughter. Obviously, she's a massive part in your life. So how do you want your daughter to see you? Like, when she grows up, gets a bit more awareness, how do you want to be portrayed as a mum? Like, what is, like, because I think about it, it's like your legacy. Yeah. But I think it's pointless being successful professionally if you're not also successful personally. Yeah. But your daughter's going to see you balancing everything and working your ass off, let's be honest, as hard as you possibly can to create the similar opportunities for her. But how do you want to be portrayed, like, from your daughter? Like, what, does that make sense?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, she's 3 now, and she was really small when I was studying and starting this. And I don't know how much she's soaked up and how much she can take in at the moment. But when she's older, I just want her to see that mummy done all this for her and for her to have the best life that she can possibly have. But what I want more than anything is to her to think that all doors are open to her and she can do anything she wants to do. because that was installed in me by my parents. There was never no. What's no? I can do whatever it is I want to do. And I think that that's really important to give to our kids. So if she thinks like that, I'll be happy. So I don't want her to see any barriers. I don't want her to see any doors closed. And if a door does close, I want her to see a way around it. I want that drive installed in her that I've got, that never kind of give up.
It's like that ant philosophy. You ever heard that?
No.
Have you ever if you stick something in front of the ant, what does the ant do? Does it just stop walking? It doesn't, does it? It just either hits the wall, goes over it, goes around it. It just never stops walking.
Wow.
So that's it.
That's true.
And they just never stop working, never stop focus. They just progress, and whatever obstacles in the way, they just continue to go and go and go and go and go until they die, basically. I think they live for like 24 hours, but anyway, back to mental health.
That's a good philosophy.
Until they die, yeah.
But yes, no barriers. If I saw barriers when I was doing this, I wouldn't have started. You've got to be good at problem solving. You've got to be resilient. You've just got to have that intrinsic dedication and motivation.
Let me ask you a question, because I think it's important. I told you that it's very important for me to have a massive, diverse people who come onto my podcast, right? So, one, what challenges did you face being not only a woman, but also a black woman? Be as honest as you can, right? Because I'm aware of a lot of barriers. I see it from a lot of my friends. I see it. And a lot of people do not understand it. They just can't get their head around it. But what challenges, if any, did you face? Did you think it would have been easier than just, say, a white male doing what you do? Do you think you would have progressed faster? I don't know. Is it a real thing? Does that make sense? I
think that black men face a very different challenge to black females.
Okay, explain.
I think black men have they're oppressed more. There's a stereotype. There's more judgment against black men. I think they've got a lot of challenges on their shoulders compared to black females.
Okay.
I think black females is a different experience. But for me, because I'm mixed race, I have a white mum and a Jamaican father, I feel like I'm quite versatile, so I can kind of go anywhere, and I think that's been a positive for me. But again, I think that it's down to mindset and kind of how you see challenges. Because actually, the course that I went on to do this, I got, a bursary, because of the colour of my skin. So actually, it depends what you're looking at, because there's a lot out there for BAME people. They just need to find it and go for it. So I think it depends on mindset as well. Don't get me wrong, there's discrimination out there, there's racism, there's institutionalized racism, 100%. But for me, so far, I haven't experienced anything in what I'm doing, but I think a lot of that's down to personality.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I think it depends on your temperament, your personality as well. And you know me, you got to know me on the training. Do I look like the kind of person that would shy away from, any challenges, or anybody who might be, possibly have their own kind of racism going on in their head? It doesn't affect me, and I haven't had anything outwardly like that. Personally, the most I've had is probably networking events.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Explain.
Because I go to a lot of networking events, and I did at the beginning when I was building this. And I think that people...
I hate networking events.
I love networking events. Again, personality though, isn't it?
But then you think, how can you stand in front of 500 people and deliver a talk? I'd much rather deliver a 500-person talk than then have to stand around after and talk to everyone.
But you never know who you're going to meet.
It's true. I can see the value in it 100%. But it's one of my anxieties, I think. Right. And I think that comes back to like where I was raised and who I was raised and the way I talk and the way I sound, being a white person talking the way I talk, or how I used to talk a lot more. I've tried so much to develop my vocabulary, the way I speak, the way I am, the way I carry myself.
So there's a lot of self-consciousness there.
Of course. Because you go to, say, uni, so you think, for example, I told you, majority of my friends growing up, a lot of them, especially from the age of 15, 20, even now, my best friends are black. And apart from you, Dave, all right, calm down. And then when I go to a place like university and I'm bouncing in a red tracksuit, just being myself do you know what I mean? And then you got these people from all different backgrounds thinking, who's this? Like, why does this white kid talk like this? Why is he pretending or acting like he's black?
Right.
But really, I wasn't acting anything. For me, I was so conscious of it, and it was me. It was who I was. It was how we all spoke. So for me, it was like trying to break down those barriers, and it's all about progress and all about growth. So sometimes I had somebody who they booked me in the end, but they didn't book me because apparently, mind you, this wasn't a good school. Right. It wasn't like, apparently I was too street.
Right, okay.
Whatever that means.
Wow.
I was too street.
Luckily,
yes. Luckily, I had another teacher who was there who told me. I said, listen, I'll do the talk for free. Bring me in.
Okay.
So I did the talk. I said, make sure the person is there waiting for me.
Wow.
Funny enough, the person didn't know. There was only one teacher in there who must have been that teacher. The talk went amazing. The feedback was incredible, and they've booked me ever since.
Wow.
But does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's all, obviously, I can't talk from your point of view or even my friend's point of view because I see it, but I don't fully understand sometimes. But it's about the awareness. And a lot of the times when I talk to, or I go into schools and it's young black boys actually mainly, they talk about their name. They talk about the color of their skin and say, oh, it's easy, like there's white privilege, and there is. I fully think there is. But I say, that isn't also an excuse not to try.
Yeah.
And I say, just like, I'm not saying it's not, it is hard for you. It's harder. If it is harder.
But there's so much behind that because, there's okay, they can try, but you need to look at where are they living, what have they got access to, what's the income, what's the family, is it a single parent household, what have they grown up in, what have they experienced. So there's a bigger picture here.
So how do you break that barrier? Like how...
In my opinion, for what I've researched for the BAME, because I'm planning some mental health training.
You do quite a lot, don't you?
Well, I'm in and out.
In and out.
I'm planning to do some BAME training, so a bit like mental health, but culturally aware, because Sikhs face different issues to what black people face. Muslim people face different things to what... So there's a difference, and we need to be aware of the prevalence of different mental health issues for different kind of cultures. So I'm planning something like that at the moment. And from the research that I've done, there needs to be an early piece with young black boys, young black girls, and we're talking 13, 12, before kind of mental health sets in, because remember, a lot of it's in adolescence.
Okay, really?
So there needs to be a lot in schools at this age.
Really, in adolescence?
For people, yeah.
I find it fascinating.
There's a lot there. There's a lot behind it that we need to tackle.
But it's good to have the conversation, and I want to talk about it because you're here. I know you're very clued on to a lot of this, and you're very well lived as well. So you've experienced different cultures. You've met a wide range of different people. I have,
and there's a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do, especially when we talk about stigma. There's generational issues, so the elders will be like, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as mental health. But the youngers, like 25, might be coming round to it. There's the cultural beliefs, there's the religion aspect of it all. There's a lot to break down and a lot of work to do.
And the world is moving so fast.
It is.
And I think there's a saying is that the world has never moved this fast, and it will never ever move this slow again.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I like that.
I said it wrong, but it's along the lines, yeah. So basically
that
the world...
deep.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know what I'm saying. Motivational speaker, type me in on YouTube, subscribe, thanks.
I like that.
No, but it's true. Like, the world has never moved this fast, and it will never ever move this slow again.
That's part
with
of
technology,
the problem, though, isn't it?
with everything. You know, it's rapid. It's a rapid response. Well, you don't respond quickly, but you know... How many times you let me down now? 9 times have you?
No, 2. Childcare, Cam. We just spoke about this.
It's true. It's true.
This fast world is part of the problem, though.
Why?
Because we were never designed for this. We were never designed to be in an office typing away 8 hours a day. We were never designed to be inside. We were never designed to have so little downtime. So this is all affecting us as human beings. And people are not taking that time out to kind of look after themselves either. But it's hard. If you've got work and you've got a missus and you've got kids, It's like overload. It's like a rat race.
Overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. It's like a rat race.
So let me ask you a question, because I've done it, and I think I know the answer. Have you ever been delivering a mental health workshop? I'm thinking, I need to take this my own advice on board right now. I'm struggling.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I took the whole of August off.
Okay.
Yeah, so I done that for a reason, and people were like, oh, but you're going to lose money. But actually... Yeah, when you need a break and to reflect, and also to re-strategize where the business is going as well, because I've got other projects that I'm working on. So actually, I needed to just take August off just to relax, because September, October, November, busy again, juggling my 3-year-old, juggling the business. It's growing. There's a lot of pressure now. It's not just, oh yeah, this is a little business. I'm growing rapidly.
So how do you make it bigger than Bianca?
Subcontract, which is what I'm going to be doing next year. So the equivalents of me up north, in the Midlands, I'm subcontracting. I've started doing that. Go UK wide, but also deliver other stuff that fits into the mental health bracket. So I would like eventually next year, which is part of my plan, is to have an office and a training room in Bristol.
Awesome.
So I can hold open courses like you came on.
Because that's good, because I've done the mental health first aid, and I've also done, is it physical first aid? Yeah. So I've done that, and I actually had to go to a training place for that, and it was actually pretty cool. So it was a nice room, everything was laid out professionally. So if you can do that. I'm really excited about that. That's the way to move forward. And also what the training room will do, because some businesses can't afford to have that training in-house, but they want one person trained. So they can send that person to me, to my training room, for the open courses that will be more regular instead of just 1 or 2 a month. And also I want people like who are doing resilience, mindfulness, NLP, positive language. I want those people to come and do courses there as well. It's like a kind of well-being training centre that all links in with mental health, and I want it to be a place that can do any sort of training that fits under that bracket and empowers the community, low income, vulnerable, BAME, a real kind of hub for learning and development. That's my business name, Empower, Develop People. That's what I want to do, and that's what I enjoy. It is a lot for just me, but I can do it. Timing though, this has been, well actually, I say timing, probably the worst time to start a business when you have a newborn, but it's done now, and there's a year, and she goes to school next September, so then I can have the office. Everything does fall into place. We can stress out so much, or we can just do. I believe that if it's meant for you, it will fit, and everything is starting to fit. Even though, don't get me wrong, there was a time where it didn't all fit at all. But that's the part of the process. And I'm paraphrasing again, but there's that quote, we believe we can do a lot more in a year than we actually can, but we believe we can do a lot less in 10 years than what we actually can. So for example, if you look at on the last 10 years of your life, you've probably came leaps and bounds to where you are now. Like for me, I still think like 10 years ago, I was rolling out on bikes with all my boys causing trouble. You think that was just 10 years ago?
Wow.
Less than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And since then, I've gone to uni, I've gone through a world of shit. Gone through a world of pain and ups and downs, failed business, grown business, met different people, hit targets, loads of things in those 10 years. So I think, wow, I wonder what I could do in the next 10 years. Do you know what I'm saying?
I just think of the last year, what a difference. Absolute mess, crying every day, to what I'm doing now. Do you know what I mean?
But do you think that's big? Do you think that is a reason why you deliver such a good workshop? And I have to admit, you do deliver a good workshop.
Oh, thanks.
That's average at best. But do you think that's because you have an understanding, you've been through it, and you've got that sense of empathy to really show? And it's if you was just an old man, no offense to old men, who who was up there just delivering it, and it wouldn't feel real. But I feel like you got a sense of understanding, and I think your age, being relatively young, helps with that as well.
I think it always helps to be doing something that you're passionate about for a start. My lived experience, although I never turn a course about me, and a lot of people do. You never do? No. You didn't? Thank you. It's not about me in my experience. I'd rather learn about the room's experience, because that's what's going to drive the learning, and people to have their own light bulb moments. There's people out there that will deliver training and actually it's kind of their counselling and they make it all about themselves. I think that that's wrong. But I think you just need to be passionate, and I really love facilitating. And I love when someone goes, I'm so thankful for that training, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z now. I've had an impact on people changing their life, or even the start of the seeds of people changing their life. And I'm really happy. I'm an open book, like I say to everyone after. Please contact me. Please keep in contact with me.
How do you not put your personal opinion and get involved in things, though? So what I mean is, we all judge. You can't sit there and pretend you don't. We do straight away, whether it's right, whether it's wrong.
Yeah.
We all create a perception of things. How do you not dive into that when you first go into a workshop? Is it hard not to?
I think you learn over time, because the Bianca that was training is not the opinionated, bullshit girl 10 years ago that might have. And I think when you facilitate and you go through training, you have to
disconnect.
not do that. To a certain extent, not disconnect with what's happening, but how helpful is it going to be if I start, shutting people down or judging them?
I just think as a trainer, and what I try to do, like even when I went to Virgin Media last week, I'm not saying I know. I'm putting these ideas out there. Let's have a conversation. Do you know what I'm saying? So people are bouncing ideas from each other, and I'm not saying I'm right, I'm not saying you're right. Let's just have this conversation. And I add a couple stories into it, and then we go from there. And this is a part of me being judgmental, right? So, for example, there was one person in the workshop, and like workshops I've been on before, some people would just talk all about well-being and stuff like this, and there's nothing, I don't think nothing particularly too wrong. Obviously I wouldn't encourage it, but about smoking, right?
Smoking what?
Just smoking.
Cigarettes? Or drugs?
Cigarettes.
Right.
And is that not a bit of a contradiction if you're forcing well-being? I know it quite in the industry, even on Instagram. I know people pushing healthy eating, healthy whatever, but then they smoke. What's your opinion on that? Do you smoke? Which is fine, but like, what do you not like? The point what I'm trying to talk about is just because why I'm so fascinated with your approach is because you don't push anything on anyone.
No.
You are all ideas. Let's talk about it. No one's perfect. Just let's focus on becoming better.
Well, you can't tell people.
But
as you said,
some people in your industry, they force it on people. They make it about themselves.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know what question I am. Do you get frustrated with that? I just see it as real and fake.
I think that you need to not be judgmental. But you're right, we all are made up of that.
We are, and I hate it.
But we need to notice that. If we're feeling judgmental about someone, we can notice that, and then we can not do it. It's difficult, but you need to let people come to their own opinions and their own lineage. You can't ram something down somebody's throat. You can plant the seed, and hopefully it will grow.
Everyone likes a bit of chocolate, but they don't want it rammed down their throat,
Basically, yeah.
But it's hard, like, how do you break from that? Because you're a couple of years older than me, and I'm still learning, I'm still developing, I'm 27.
What do you think would happen if I did do that on my courses in corporate businesses, if I'd done that to the delegates?
You just look like a bit of an idiot.
There'd be complaints.
People would be, because it's an adult...
There'd be an argument in the
There'd be arguments,
workshop.
And people would be intense, and it wouldn't be a fun, light experience, and I don't think...
Exactly.
What people tend to do is defend, and don't actually listen.
I probably wouldn't be invited back either.
No, you wouldn't.
Exactly.
You'd be back in retail.
Yeah, which is okay. I like retail.
Yeah, which is okay.
I like people.
But, you've got these big business goals and dreams, so don't lie to yourself, gang. Come on. You don't want that shit, man. That was 10 years ago. Come on. No, but it's hard. Like, I'm just talking about, because I know that I can judge, and I know it's not good, and I try my best. And one thing I do feel like being 27, I am a lot more self-aware. Especially, say, for example, my parents. Like, I mean, like, I think
generational.
I think, how are you like 50 or something, and you're not even aware of your stupid behaviour?
There's lots of generational issues with mental health that will die out eventually, because the millennials, they're coming around to it. So that will die out. I think it's going to change. It's only going to get better. It'd be interesting to see what the statistics are like in a couple of decades in terms of suicide with men.
So I'm playing devil's advocate here. Do you think that suicide rates will increase because mental health has become such a topic? Or how has it looked over the years? I'm not expecting you just to reel out statistics here, but it has become, like, growing up, you didn't really hear anybody taking their own lives. I don't know whether it was because of my age, but even with my parents and stuff. But now I know about 3 people, I think, over the last 5-6 years.
It depends again where you've grown up. It depends on the circumstances, to if you're around it, to if you've been aware of it. There's lots to that. But suicide's always higher in men, 3 to 1 typically.
Why do you think that is?
So many reasons. I mean, we were talking before we sat down to Dave over there. The start of it is talking. Men still see it as a weakness, which goes back to the language. Yeah, and then in that you've got cultural stuff going on as well. So men aren't talking. There's a stigma. There's that it's a weakness when it isn't a weakness. There's all that, and then there's getting help. So a lot of men aren't even registered at a doctor's. A lot of men won't go to a doctor's if there's a problem either. And even if they do go to the doctor's, they leave without a diagnosis possibly as well. So that's even the beginning bit of it all.
Do you know what? One thing what happened in your in your workshop, what we done, everyone was like, NHS, 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 and you was like, guys, like, get off, stop. And you was like, it's not about the doctors, like, they got so much stress themselves, they got only a short period to diagnose things, and that's why I think you discussed a lot about other things you can do. Yeah. Of course you go to the doctors, of course you can get diagnosed, but then there's all these other ideas as well, so let's talk about that. Don't just point the finger, that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, first port of call if someone's struggling is always doctors anyway, because they're the gateway to other referrals, so the advice is always go to the doctor. But what we were disputing about is, okay, this medication might help some people,
but don't help others.
Exactly. But I believe personally there needs to be a joint approach. So yes, medication, and yes, holistic. So yeah, you can be on antidepressants, but don't just rely on just being on antidepressants.
Because you'll be on them for the rest of your life.
Exactly. And
you become dependent.
Yeah, possibly as well. And you need to look at what you're doing to underpin your well-being. So your sleep, your nutrition, your kind of exercise, your water intake, all those things as well.
Everything plays a massive part in it.
So that underpins your well-being. You got your antidepressants, which is your medication, and the other thing, the holistic side, mindfulness and meditation. You know, acupuncture. Explore that kind of stuff as well. Our mind is very busy.
When was the last time you meditated, Dave?
Does exercise count?
Does exercise count as well?
If you're doing it mindfully, possibly.
Mindfully. When was the last time you sat down to meditate?
Exercise?
Never. When was the last time you sat down to meditate?
3 days ago.
Really?
Yeah.
And he's 19 as well.
That is millennial. I'm impressed.
I don't mind. No, but
all these things can help.
Factors.
Yeah. So it can't just be medication. It needs to be, we're a whole person. We need that holistic approach.
I think that's my only concern, is that I just feel like they just do give medication to anybody, but then I don't have no facts or opinions behind that, only experiences. And I think maybe what does make me angry is because the people are just relying on the medication, and they're not doing all the other things that you said about. And then they become dependent, and all of a sudden they drop the dose a little bit, and then all of a sudden they can't cope anymore. But really, how much we in our own heads, how much we, it's like caffeine. People feel like they can't start their day without a coffee.
Yeah, we looked at the caffeine as well, didn't we? Which isn't a great thing.
And one thing we talked about as well was sex as well. When I said that, everyone was like, I can't say that.
Yeah, trust you. Thank you for that.
No, but it's true, and it's also
as a stress relief.
It's natural remedies though. Like,
but even before the sex, just connection and being social, which is not as much in this day and age. Why do we think that is? Yeah, social media. So we'll send a WhatsApp.
Social media is so bad, but if you want to follow me on Instagram, CamParkerHUD,
we don't go and see people face to face. That connection's lacking.
This.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we?
That's what we need to
change
do.
it up a little bit, and just like people talk a lot about. People talk a lot about just talk. Is it really that simple just to talk? Because some people are ready to talk. And I like the idea of talk about it, but I don't know if it's just too simple.
Well,
playing devil's advocate again, it's just, I don't know.
And this is coming from a male. So what do you know?
Sometimes I just don't want to talk.
Yeah. Sometimes you just want to sit there and be sad with someone.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when I do want to talk, sometimes it's about finding a person who just don't talk back to you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just let me blow my steam and just shut up for a minute. But like sometimes you feel like you can't talk, and I guess that's another male problem maybe. But sometimes I just don't want to. I just want to be left alone.
Well, what do women do when they want to talk? Like, we meet each other and the first thing we say is, how are you? Like, we instantly start having those conversations. Men, I don't know what you're doing in the pub. Like, do you actually say, how are you?
That's a stereotypical view. I don't go to the pub.
What are you doing? Do you say, how are you? Do you say, how's the missus? What's going on for you? I don't know if there's that level of kind of conversation in the first place.
Let me ask you a question. When do you know when to ask for help?
When do you know when to ask for help? Do you know as a person? This is the problem, though. It starts with that self-awareness piece. And if that person's not self-aware, what we need to rely on is the people around that person to be able to point out, oh, actually, I've noticed X, Y, and Z. Hence why 1 in 10 people need to be trained as a mental health first aider, because a lot of people don't have that self-awareness. So they need someone else to point out things to them. If you have got self-awareness.
That was Dave's question, by the way. He sent me a message. That was his question.
Thanks, Dave. That self-awareness piece needs to be there, and if it's not there, you need to rely on other people to tell you.
And how many people do I know, and like you might know, just like people who are actually struggling? And
1 in 4.
1 in 4.
Typically.
But then, as I think I said this,
there's 4 people in this room.
Yeah.
So one of us is struggling at the moment with something.
I've struggled not too long ago. I talked about one of my talks. Well, I don't know when I did the mental health course with you, but in like February and March. Yeah, in February and March, I was in Ipswich Hospital, and my whole body had a shutdown. And I literally convinced myself I was going to die. I had some type of illness, and really what it was caused some stress.
Wow.
I didn't actually mention that. I talked about it last week, actually. And yeah, that was a deep time for me. I remember being outside the hospital, ringing my wife and crying to her, thinking like, the news ain't good. I had about 90 minutes. They took all my bloods. I was basically waiting my fate. I walked in there, sat down, and the lady was like, "You're fine." Like, you're a healthy 27-year-old man. But straight away I'm like, she's lying. I'm not fine. I know I'm not fine. But she's like, get on, like, sit down. And then we did some extra tests. And she said, I just think, what's wrong with me then? Because like, I feel like my legs, my mental kind of like my feet was throbbing, my legs were throbbing, tingling. That Monday night when I was talking at school, my hand cramped, so it was all playing in my mind, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. So I took myself I was in Ipswich, took myself to the hospital by myself, and I just wasn't in a good place, and it was all caused some stress. But then stress on top of stress, because then I started panicking. What is this? Am I dying? Am I got a mad disease? What's happening?
See, in the world that we live in, stress is inevitable, and it's, our minds are so powerful.
But you know what made it worse? Leading up to that moment, I didn't feel too particularly stressed.
Right.
Does that make sense?
There was probably something that you can't pinpoint that was a trigger.
That's what I mean. It's crazy.
Stress, it comes out physically in us in many ways.
I thought it couldn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. Over time, really harmful, really damaging. So that's why it's so important that people do their me time, unwind their mind, take care of themselves.
Right, so I ask every guest this question, right? On the spot. If you could sit down...
Oh, God.
Excuse me.
Oh, right. God.
If you could sit down with any 3 people, dead or alive, famous, what 3 people would it be?
I have no idea.
No, don't give me that crap. Come on.
I actually have no idea.
I think, come on. Don't be the only guest I've had who hasn't answered.
I don't know. I'll come back to you. I can't literally think of 3 people.
Can't think of 3 people?
No.
Okay, do you think your employed people, not just subcontract to run your training and stuff like that, eventually?
It's funny you say this, Cam.
Or do you think you would employ a PA first? So like for me, obviously I've got an apprentice who eventually going to move forward with. And also I think the next step for me is not potentially get another speaker. I think I just need a PA to organise me.
If you get another speaker, it won't be you. And you're the brand. So I think I would go with the admin stuff. And the same with me. It's a difficult decision, something that I've been thinking about, because I've been thinking about my business plan next year because it's changed a bit. And I've got to decide you know, whether I get admin help or whether I subcontract 100%. It's difficult, isn't it? Because if you enjoy what you're doing, you need to think about what you get the buzz out of. When that 2-day training ends, or the 1 day or the half day, I'm buzzing. I love it. The feedback's great. And I enjoy it.
But then you've got to go back to do the emailing, the invoicing, the paperwork, the everything else, getting business. And that's what people don't understand. Like, we got to do it all. We got to pick up the phone. We got to chase. I told you, obviously, talking about it again, and you said about with some of your big clients, Virgin Media, I forced that upon the lady. And what I mean by that, she emailed me saying, is there something you can do? Straight away, my mind's working. Maybe she's emailed 2 or 3 different speakers. So straight away, I picked up the phone and I called her. She loved how enthusiastic I was. She said, it's still just an idea at the moment. I'll get back to you when we've got something in place. So what did I do the following week? Called her back. 2 weeks after, I called her back. I gave her no choice but to book me. She couldn't go with anyone else because I forced it upon her. Because I told her I am the best at what I do. Just give me a chance. And she hands her behind her back. Then she had to, because she needed someone for that day. And I think you talked about cold calling. You're talking about growing your business. How important is it to be uncomfortable? Start getting comfortable being uncomfortable. You have to be, right? Really
important. Unless you can sell yourself, then you're going to struggle. You need to be able to sell yourself. You need to be able to sell your business. You need to be able to speak about it. You need to be able to be not forceful, but you need to be able to kind of be a bit pushy with things.
But you're pushy because you care.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be for other reasons, external reasons, paying bills. You got to get paid, of course.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, the reason why the reason why I push so hard is because I genuinely believe in what I do and I know what I can offer. And it comes from what? Developing and working on what you do, I think.
Yeah, but in the corporate world, you'd have to tone that down a little bit.
A little bit. Well, schools are hard, I'm telling you.
Possibly.
Money.
But it's passion, so that comes across, and that's good.
Do you think you'll do a lot more stuff with younger people, or do you just all corporate at the moment and then make your base in corporate, and then when you're highly successful, then you give back to the...
I'm passionate about the community of Bristol, particularly BAME, and I want to do a lot of stuff there, which I'm developing at the moment, in terms of kind of some prevention training in mental health and some culturally aware training for mental health. But adults is where I'm sitting at the moment. Businesses is what I enjoy because I understand business, so I enjoy that aspect of it. But I do believe that there's a lot more that needs to be done in schools and with kids. I don't think I'm the one for that, because that's not where my passion lies.
Aware of you too.
And again, I can't do something that I'm not
into.
It's integrity, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think that there's lots of people that will be jumping on that, because there's a lot of funding for schools at the moment. So that's brilliant, but I'm happy with what I'm doing.
But that's exactly where I am though, because I think right now schools and stuff is obviously my passion, but now I'm starting to grow older a little bit, so I'm starting to kind of get the same mindset shift what I imagine you've had, and I want to start doing a lot more adults, but I don't want to ignore, because I've got such a big network in schools now. One thing what I would want to do is potentially train young speakers to go and do what I do. Okay, they're not going to be me, but I've got the Dreams to Reality brand, and they know they're not going to get me, but the price might not be as high, but they're still getting a similar high quality service, which is overlooked by me. And if I confirm who the speakers are, they're going to know that it's some type of standard.
Yeah.
But obviously that takes time, it takes training, and it takes money, it takes resources, and a lot of stress. But that's also similar. I think we're building something quite similar, I think. And it's amazing to see, especially because a lot of people who do what we do, I'm not too sure about the mental health first aid course, but a lot older. Like the best speakers in the game of doing what I do, they're double my age.
Right, okay. Wow.
Do you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm competing against.
But I think it comes back to you as a person, isn't it, as well?
Why?
I think you've got to be likeable.
Am I likeable?
Yeah, of course you are.
Do you like me, Dave? No?
You've got to be likeable, because they're buying into you as well. And a lot of the calls that I get is they want me. So I could subcontract to somewhere I haven't been before, but the people that I see now, they're probably still wanting it to be me doing the training.
That's the hard thing though, isn't it? To scale, that's hard.
It is, but it can be done, because the most important thing is that you need to have a business that can run without you. You can't make it all about you.
Yes, that's my mind, because let's be honest, if you die, touch wood, that doesn't happen, what are you leaving behind for your daughter? And do you know what, you could have this whole empire, you could have this business, and potentially obviously your daughter might be young, say for example, but it's still something there what could be sold or moved on to somebody else, and the money would be there. So yeah, I think it's good that you think like that.
I just think my main thing is, if you're doing something that you're passionate about, it will always work out. That's my motto. If you're doing something that your heart's not really in, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, maybe just money motivated, for example, it's not going to work out. But if you're doing something that you believe in and that you're passionate and is aligned to your goals, you're going to do well. You're going to fly. Nothing can stop you because it's pure.
I think we should end it there, to be honest. I think that was amazing. How long have we been in, Dave?
Almost 50 minutes.
I'm still thinking about those 3 people. Could you have not given me some warning for that?
No,
I can't think
nobody's. Come on, 3.
I
You
can't.
mentioned 1. You said that Beyonce.
I did.
Would Beyonce be 1? I would love to sit down with Beyonce.
Yeah, Beyonce would be 1.
To hear about her story, of course.
Of course. For her business brain, I think what she's done is very clever, and she's survived groups breaking up. She's survived all this controversy with Jay-Z. So I think she's a very strong woman.
Number 2?
Oh my God. Can I just leave it at 1? I can't think of a number 2.
Come on, that's disappointing. Come on.
Can I email you?
Email me. Okay, with that said, where can people find you, Bianca? Where are you? You got a website?
Yeah, so the website is empowerdeveloppeople.co.uk. And I'm on social media, and Bianca Jones on LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect. I just want to say thank you for your time. It was a pleasure. I think we've done, literally, I think the topics we covered today are, all jokes aside, very, very important. And as I've said, it's important for us to offer as much value as we can. And I feel especially, this is probably one of the podcasts I've done in, 14, I think, 15? No,
wow.
17 now, I think. Where I think people can really take a lot away from what you've said. And I can see that it is a passion of yours. So maybe in 12 months we can catch up again. Maybe a little bit longer actually in your new training studio, and we can do this all again.
That would be amazing.
Right, perfect. With that said, guys, all Bianca's information will be in the description below. I do want to say a massive thank you for Gadget Line for making this happen and powering this podcast. And of course, hit that big red button, subscribe, follow us, follow exactly what we're doing. And if you want to see anybody else in this podcast, then just reach out. And remember, you can either have one thing, right? You can either have excuses or you can have results. But you just cannot have both.